Welcome to An Outside View. I'm your host, Dick Sicaro, and joining me today is Tina Cardoso, who is a candidate for mayor in the city of Brockton. She's also a sitting councilor. Tina, welcome to An Outside View.
Thank you, Dick, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, let's get right into it. Why don't you tell the people a little bit about your background and why you're running for mayor?
So, Tina Cardoso, I'm a registered nurse, 25 years. I grew up in Dorchester. I'm an immigrant from Cape Verde Islands, came to the U.S. when I was 4 with my family. And I moved to Brockton about 20 years ago. Raised my kids in Brockton. They all graduated Brockton High School, went on to higher education, and now they're on their own with all good jobs and doing well in their careers. About 5 years ago, I started a nonprofit organization. As my children were getting older and I had more free time, I decided to start a nonprofit so we can tackle mental illness and domestic violence. I'm a survivor of domestic violence, so I felt I could give back, given my experiences, a little bit in the community. And we've been doing really well for 5 years. We're going strong. We're a valuable partner in the community. We received a couple grants from DPH and doing really good work. Then I got into the politics. I was identified a few years ago in 2017 as a potential good candidate to run against an incumbent. Had been in Ward 3 in my ward for 14 years. So I ran that race. It was really great. I never thought I had it in me at the time. And I came really close to taking out an incumbent of 14 years. I lost by less than 200 votes.
Oh, very impressive.
Yeah. First time out, no one knew me. We did a lot of hard work and was very close. So then I decided to stay in. And I remained involved through my nonprofit, through my community activism, followed the city council meetings, and just stayed really involved. And I ran again in 2019. And I won at large.
Which is a big undertaking because it's a big city, 95,000 people, and you're responsible for the entire city as opposed to just a ward. On that subject, that's very interesting because I was born and raised in Brockton. I spent 62 years of my life there. I was involved with politics as you were. I ran several times. I was on public service committees for years under different mayors. So Brockton right now is 65% minority, I'd say at least.
Right.
When I graduated from Brockton High, it was 5,000 students in that high school. There was only 150 minorities.
Wow.
So the form of government, there's A and B government. A is a strong mayor, weak council. B is weak mayor, strong council. Right. So in Brockton, you have a B form of government. So you have a mayor, and then you have 11 city councilors. You have 7 ward councilors and 4 at large. Right now, there are only 3 minority city councilors in the entire city, you being one.
Yes.
That comes out to 27%.
Right.
But yet you have a city of 65%.
Right.
I mean,
we're definitely underrepresented on the council.
Not, I was just going to say, it's not a good representation of the demographics in the city.
Right.
So I applaud you for running.
Thank you very much.
The other minorities.
Yep. Thank you very much. But it's not about me, Dick. It's about empowering other folks to do the same. So these last couple years, I've empowered a few folks to run for office that are running this year. So it's actually exciting that we have a more diverse group of folks that are running for the city council seats this year. It's the most diverse that I've seen it in years. And great. A lot of that has been, me trying to pull people in, because I feel that that's where we go wrong. We get in and we don't do enough to try to empower others to do the same. So we're going to get there eventually. We have, I want to say, 4 open seats with me running for mayor. There's an open seat, and then we have some folks that have retired in Ward 1, 2, and 3. So hopefully we're looking at, history in the making with this election, where we'll be able to, have more representation on the council.
So you're approaching the end of a 2-year term as a city councilor at large. Let's inform the viewers of how your experiences have been as a city councilor, what you think are key components to be a good councilor, what are not good components, and maybe some of the reasons why you're running for mayor compared to the incumbent's track record?
Well, it's definitely been a challenge. And so, I came in during a pandemic. So that complicated some of the learning the procedures and learning government. When I first took the seat, I was very excited to learn more and to grow within the role. But then when the pandemic hit, we had to,
Right.
restructure like what we were doing on the council so that we can meet the needs of the people. So it's definitely been very challenging, but also I'm a minority woman, like you said, coming into a mostly white male panel, if you will. That's not easy. And especially when you're an outspoken woman like myself and you're asking difficult questions because you want to really represent the people. I went in there to represent the people. And so my duty as a counselor is to ask those tough questions to make sure I'm doing my due diligence to represent folks. And that's been a challenge because I guess I went into a system that had been there for a long time where you're not supposed to speak up. And you're supposed to rubber stamp everything and keep it moving.
Like the old adage, silence is golden to them.
Right. So, it's definitely been challenging. I've met a lot of stonewalling and, a lot of roadblocks and folks trying to silence me. And each time I speak up, oftentimes it's misinterpreted and, it hits social media, Tina's doing this and she's doing that and she's a troublemaker. But
I've been labeled that in the past myself when I did a lot of shows there.
Yeah, but when you ask what makes a good counselor, I listen to people. And when people bring me ideas, I present those ideas to the CFO, to the mayor, to the council. I ask questions. Is this a better way to do things? But it's, I'm getting the sense more and more that we don't want change on this council or in this administration. We just want to just keep things going the way it's been going for a long time. And that's one of the main reasons I'm running. I think we can't afford another 2 years of the same old. It's, folks are saying, Tina, I've been going to Brockton for 20 years. I don't see any changes. There are recent articles that are showing Brockton as one of the worst cities in the Commonwealth for infrastructure, lack of jobs, crime, for many reasons. And I think COVID-19, we saw a lot of the inequities and the disparities that exist in the community that we haven't tackled. And so
Great point.
I feel like we need someone that understands those disparities. I'm a registered nurse of 25 years.
So you, speaking of COVID, who better to fight the pandemic and help out than a registered nurse who, by the way, on the front lines dealing with COVID?
Absolutely, and we're taught critical thinking skills and we're taught how to jump into crisis situations and really prioritize, what's going to get us out of this situation. So during the pandemic, I was ready and prepared to do that and was able to help a lot of folks, and I felt like I showed some true leadership. I reached out to our state delegates for help to make sure Brockton was being prioritized as far as funding. And I took a role that I feel the only way I could do that is because of my connection to the community, because I knew the community well, which differentiates myself from my opponent. I feel like, my opponent's been there for 16 years, so you would think he would have a better grip as to what the needs were so he could prioritize. And I didn't see that. And that's another reason that I'm running.
Now, Brockton, interesting enough, they're the only city in Plymouth County out of 27 communities, the rest are towns. So you're one of the biggest components of Plymouth County. And Plymouth County, by the way, was the only county in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts who decided to take the federal relief monies for the pandemic and distribute them to Brockton and the rest of the towns in the county. Every other county in the Commonwealth gave the federal funds to the state to distribute, including Norfolk County. So,
and I signed on to that letter to push that so that we.
And if I believe the mayor, the incumbent mayor, was against the county. And I happened to watch the city council meeting the other night, and several of the councilors gave great accolades to the county for doing such a great job.
I mean, I thought there was a lot of optics there. They're taking pictures and they're presenting checks, but a lot of folks in the community, they want to know, where did the funds go? We've received $14 million so far, but I've asked on several occasions to give us a detailed report on where the monies went. People are still suffering in the city. I know we did some things with the schools, and we provided laptops to the children for virtual learning. There was PPE that we gave out to folks and in those items, but did we really spend that $14 million, properly? Where is the transparency? Can they provide us with receipts as to where the monies went, and what are we doing with the rest of the money that's coming in? So that's what I've been doing a lot of, Dick, on the council, is just really pushing for more accountability, more transparency, and oftentimes being met with, a lot of, pushback and a lot of misinterpretation of who I am and what I stand for. Each time I fight for something, something comes out on social media and other platforms that paint me as a certain person just for speaking up. For example, the police, the complex, the $98 million public safety complex that we wanted to build. I voted no on that because I felt like it was being pushed through really quickly. There wasn't enough information that stated that, we did a feasibility study, that we need this complex, and, we need this amount of money to build the complex, and there wasn't enough public input into this borrowing. That's why I voted against it. Wasn't because of anti-police, but the very next day, Tina's anti-police.
So I think your brother is a police officer in Boston,
yes,
right?
so my brother's a Boston police officer. I have many cousins, many friends that are police officers. I grew up with a long line of police officers. And so, for you to paint that picture to make me look like the bad guy when I'm just trying to advocate for the taxpayers, because that's what I'm there for, is to make sure that the taxpayers are getting a bang for their buck, because they work hard for their money. So if we can borrow $98 million just like that, why can't we hear from folks to see what they would prioritize for those funds?
So let's talk about a couple other issues. So you're a big advocate for accountability and transparency. That seems there's been a definite lack of. Let's talk about taxes. I know Brockton has one of the highest commercial tax rates of any community, particularly in the South Shore, with your neighbors. So if I were a businessman and I was going to locate somewhere, the first thing I'm going to look at is your commercial tax rate. And when I see a commercial tax rate, I believe Brockton is like $29 per thousand. And the other communities are in the teens. So it's a huge disparity. What can you do to offset that? I'm on the Board of Assessors in this town. And one of the things you can do is introduce residential and small business commercial tax exemption. And what that basically, the way that works, you get a threshold for what a business is worth or what a home is valued at. And then for the lower income people, they get a tax break, and it's shifted to the higher income people. Would you consider something
Absolutely, and
like
these
that
are things that we're not looking at. I'm a registered nurse. I don't have a financial background. But when you have folks in the community, and we have some really smart people in Brockton, that they are working in Boston for big corporations that are doing this all day long. They're not working in Brockton because our salaries are just, they're not getting paid well. But when you have folks in the community that are having these conversations, I've had a lot of information come to me while on the council because I listen to people. That's one of the skills that I have. I like to listen to people. Now, are folks always correct? No. But my duty is to bring the information to the CFO, to the mayor, and say, hey, can you look at this? Can you do a comparison? Can you see if this will save our taxpayers money? Each time I do that, I'm met with, no, this isn't gonna work, this person doesn't know what they're talking about, or you're misinformed. I'll send them actual links, actual data on a lot of this to see if they would entertain a conversation. They won't even entertain a conversation. And so as mayor, I welcome the smart folks, younger folks. We have a lot of young, bright people in Brockton with a lot of great ideas on how we can save our taxpayers money. I welcome them to come in to talk about these things, to show us the data, to show us what other gateway cities comparable to Brockton are doing, and how they're doing well, and how, where we're lacking, so we can provide some enhancements. That's what I want to do. But whenever you propose something, you're a troublemaker, This person doesn't know what they're talking about.
Right.
No, we're doing it the right way. But meanwhile, I don't think we're in a financially stable situation in Brockton right now. I think we're on a downward spiral, and I have a fear that things are not going to get any better
Right.
if we don't have a change in administration. You need someone that's open to suggestions, someone that is going to look at these comparisons and see where we can, save our taxpayers some money.
Terrific. So it sounds like when you get elected mayor, and by the way, you'll make history in the city of Brockton. You'll be the first minority woman mayor ever in the city.
So exciting.
We had an acting minority mayor in there who serves on the council with you. I
Yes.
think he was there for
For
6 months when the former mayor passed away suddenly.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like you'll be advocating an open door policy. You get
Absolutely.
the community
Absolutely.
involved as well.
And tap into all that, the knowledge that we have and the workforce that we have. We have hardworking people in Brockton.
Right. You got a tremendous labor force. I mean, a
Absolutely.
good friend of mine, Ed Byers, that owns Cindy's Kitchen, they produce, manufacture their own salad dressing all over the
Yes.
world. They're a huge employer in the city of Brockton. They have about 250 employees.
Right.
And there's a strong labor pool in
Right.
the city of
There is.
Brockton that's
People
being
wanna work.
underutilized,
Yes.
correct?
They want to work. They don't want to depend on government assistance. During
Right.
the pandemic, we were helping folks with assistance, but a lot of them were anxious to get back to work. They didn't
Right.
want to sit home and not do anything, because then you fall into depression, mental illness, and all this other
Right.
stuff. So a
Right.
lot of folks want to work. There's a misconception that people don't want to work and they want to rely on government aid. There are a lot
Right.
of hardworking people in Brockton,
Right.
a lot of smart people, a lot of youth that just need to catch a break. And we're not doing enough for our youth in Brockton. We
Right.
want to build this complex and prioritize safety, but what about prevention? What about jobs for our youth? What about more
Right.
VOTEC,
Yep.
programs for them, sports complex?
Right.
There's just so much that we can do better, and I feel like I could be that mayor to do that.
And as you pointed out, as opposed to one central location off the downtown
Right.
for $100 million,
Right.
you need more visibility throughout the city. It's a big city, so wouldn't
Right.
you be better served having
Satellite.
satellite
Yes.
offices throughout the city?
Yep, and then you can build better community with police
Yeah.
and the folks that live
Right.
there, because they're more visible. That's a big concern of our residents, is visibility of police.
Right.
They're not seeing enough police officers outside.
Right.
During the 4th of July with the fireworks, a lot of complaints about fireworks and police not really enforcing a lot of the noise. We put together a noise ordinance. I actually voted against the ordinance because I didn't feel like it was drafted well enough, and I didn't feel that it would be enforced. And
Right.
now we're noticing that it's not being enforced.
Right.
So I think we could do better by serving the people better. I had to put in a resolution last week to look at diversity within the police and the fire departments, to make sure that we're doing all that we can to diversify those departments, because as you said, we're a very diverse community now. We've changed a lot, so we need
Right.
those folks to represent the community that they serve.
Absolutely.
But
And-
whenever you do stuff like that, Dick, it's all of a sudden you're against this and you're against that.
Right.
Not against any of that. I just want us to have safer communities. I want us to invest in programs for our youth to prevent violence, and to build better relationships with police.
All great platforms.
Yes.
Speaking of which, when you mentioned diversity and hiring practices, I know the city's got, I think, 45 lawsuits.
Yes.
One gentleman just settled for $4.5 million. So if they don't do something about
Yes.
addressing lawsuits, it has the potential of bankrupting the city.
Absolutely. And right now we have no human resource director. We have no assistant
Right.
human resource director. We were supposed to hire a diversity director with the Lopes case that we settled. That was a huge
Right.
discrimination case, and we never hired that person. We have an interim auditor. Our auditor left a while ago. We have the chief of staff had left, or I don't know, terminated. I don't know what happened. They never tell us. He just hired another chief of staff. But all of these major department heads, I think there's been about 10 positions that have left under this
Sounds
administration.
like there's a little chaos
There's
in the
chaos.
mayor's administration
Yes,
for whatever
and
reason.
It shows, the leadership style that he
Right.
has when these folks are jumping ship. It's not
Right.
good for us to go without a human resource
Right.
person for this long. It's been
Sure.
at least 6
Absolutely.
months
Right.
now.
So we mentioned a little bit about keeping taxes down through possibly exploring a residential and commercial tax exemption. The other things you can do is better manage the city. I mean, you have a desalinization plant that's
Right.
costing $120 million for alternative water that the state mandated back during the drought.
Right, that we don't
So,
use.
Right now, right, exactly. You don't even use the water because it's
Right.
18 times more expensive than your primary
Right.
source, which is Silver Lake Regional.
Right.
So you could use the surrounding wells for an alternative. You could do a
Right.
one-shot hookup with MWRA for $5 million and only pay for the water when you need it.
Right, and these are things that I've asked for us to look into.
Right.
And it actually, the last
Accountability.
time we did the test on that plant, you know, it didn't perform for 4 days.
Right, so you could possibly look into getting out of the contract due
Right.
to non-performance. And the mayor stated himself when he ran for mayor 2 years ago that Brockton shouldn't be in the water business.
That's right.
But yet, you only owe $30 million on the remaining portion of the contract.
Yep.
But one of the councilors, I believe Councilor Rodriguez,
Wants us to
and the
purchase
mayor
it.
wants to purchase it for $80 million
Right.
when you only owe 30. It doesn't
And it'll
make sense.
cost us more than that because we'll have to run the
Right.
plant, we'll have to hire folks to run the
Yeah.
plant. It'll increase, you know,
Uh-huh.
our pension liabilities and everything else. So
Right.
there's a lot too that we have to consider if we want to purchase.
Yeah.
I say we should get out of it for non-performance
Right.
and look at a different source.
Absolutely. And a lot of communities and government now, instead of taxing to the max every year and holding on to the surplus of cash, they should use that to fund some of the other programs, vital programs. And there's so many things you can do.
There's
As a
a lot.
comparison, you can look into maybe the city's pension fund returns versus the state.
Right.
The
That's
state,
something else that I've asked them to do.
Right. The state GIC healthcare
Right.
versus being self-insured and capitalize on volume discounts.
Right.
You could look into more aggressively investing the OPEB
Right.
trust fund monies, which
Right.
is other employee post benefits. So there's so much you can do.
There's so much you can do. We need to look at bringing in new revenue to the city. Definitely enhancements across all of the departments, more accountability across all of the departments, better leadership, more prudent spending.
Right.
There's a lot we can do, but I don't think that this administration they're not showing the proper leadership to get us there. You know,
Right.
you got to be able to listen. You got to be able to.
Absolutely. I loved when you said listen to people.
Right.
A lot of people don't listen to people.
They
It's their
don't.
way or the highway.
That's right.
And before you got on the council, I recall a very controversial vote, and it was unanimously passed with one exception. There was a city councilor at large, Jay Stewart, who ran for mayor,
Right.
and he voted against this. And one of the councilors, I believe Tim Cruz, had to recuse himself because his sister was the personnel director. But a vote, and I couldn't believe this. I covered it on one of my cable shows. The other councilors voted in the majority not to require minimum qualifications for department heads. And they're running multi-million-dollar budgets. I could not believe, I couldn't fathom that. And the only thing that triggered in my head, as I covered on my show, maybe it's tied into nepotism.
Well,
maybe
you
they're
know,
getting
that's
their
what
relatives
it is.
and
I was
friends
just
that
going to
aren't
say
qualified.
that. They're there for years, and not only are they employed for years, when they retire, they come back as consultants.
Right.
So it's the same people running the city
Same old,
for
same
many,
old.
many years, you
Right.
know, and it's time for change. It's
Right.
time for people who have retired to stay retired.
I
you know,
agree.
you're getting a good
and
pension.
they're driving $60,000
You're driving these cars. You got
vehicles.
your pension and everything else. Just stay retired. I think our mayor has not done his due diligence to seek out qualified people to advise him. He
Right.
stayed within the same circle of
network,
folks.
same
He
old, same
recycles the same people you see coming in and out. We're not
Yeah.
going to get anywhere. We're going to remain stagnant if we don't bring in new ideas and new people.
Some
and-
of the folks refer to the good old boy network.
That's right.
And speaking of which, I noticed the mayor just signed the public safety contracts. He renegotiated, and it's been in limbo for 2 years, so they're going to have to go back retroactively and fund that.
Yeah.
Now, do you think the timing raises any suspicion?
Of course, it's an election year.
That's politics. There's an old saying, politics makes strange
That's right.
bedfellows.
Well, I'm all for collective bargaining and making sure we're sticking
Absolutely.
to those contracts. I'm a nurse who was with SCIU and M&A, so I've been part of the unions, and I just think it's, you know, a shame that we're having folks in limbo for so long. These are their livelihoods, and we have to prioritize, you know.
One other thing you can look into when you become mayor is when a retiree hits a certain age, they lose the city retirement benefits and they're forced to go on Medicare, which isn't bad because it's low. It's a low cost anyway. But they lost their dental coverage.
That's right.
So we all know how expensive a dentist
Exactly.
is, and the insurance covers very little. They might cover a cleaning or two a year, or one filling.
Right.
And
I've been hearing that, Dick, and I think that that's something that we should look at. We want to make sure our retirees are being treated well, and make sure that we're doing the best that we can to not fall behind with the pension obligation like we just did. We just had to vote on a
$360 million pension obligation. So what you should ask, I don't want to tell you what to do, but maybe in the future council meetings, when they become 110% funded, 120% funded, 150% funded, the city for years has been funding pension funds of millions of dollars in employer contributions.
Right.
Well, when they have excess funding, maybe it's time to negotiate with them and say, hey, how much are we going to get back of this excess funding?
Right.
I mean, your appropriations will be lower, but you're still on the hook for the normal cost of funding pensions, which is $7 million a year. And then you're on the hook to pay the bondholders $360 million. The retirement system is not going to do that. The city's going to do that.
Right.
So maybe you say, okay, let's split it 60-40. You keep 60%, give 40% back to the city. So that's a very valid point to
really
look
great
into.
ideas, Dick. Great ideas. Everything that you're saying are things that we've, you know, discussed with the CFO, with the mayor at some point. And like I said, there has to come a time where you say, hey, let's see if this is really legit. You know, let's look into this. But it seems that if it's an idea that's brought up by myself or members in the community, it's not something that they want to look at.
Right. I applaud you because I watch the council meetings all the time. Today you have access to social media and city meetings all the time. But you're one of the few on the council that actually questions things and do your due diligence. Everyone else just sits there. And it's like a rubber stamp. They vote on it.
Well, you said we have, you know, this B-style government, right, where we're supposed to be a strong council.
Collectively, right, yeah.
How are we a strong council if we're not asking the tough questions, if we're just rubber stamping everything? We get a budget every year. We get it a couple weeks before we have to. This time around, we got it a couple weeks. Last year was a week before, before we have to vote on it. But our vote is not based on any type of accounting. It's not grounded in any reconciliation, like from the different departments. It's, you know, the department heads ask for a certain amount of money and we give it to them. We may take a little bit off here and off of there, but then we just end up giving it back to them later on somehow. I'd like to see more detailed reports. What did you spend your money on?
Absolutely.
How many roads did you pave?
You're representing the taxpayers.
That's right. And with your employees, where are the performance evaluation? You're looking for raises for your employees. Have they been performing? What is your performance rate in your department overall?
Absolutely.
So I think the council is not doing their due diligence to ask these things, and we're not doing right by the people in Brockton. You know, and a lot of people are not paying attention because we've pushed them out of government. There's no way for them to be involved in government. The councilors weren't even involved. Our mayor kept us out for 2 years. We couldn't even get in touch with him. You know, he won't answer the phone.
And you're an acting city council.
And I'm an acting council. So if you can't get into, the councils can't get in touch with the mayor, the city, you know, the residents are not getting in touch with the mayor. So they're doing whatever they need to do, and we're not, you know, they're not being transparent with any receipts or anything. So the council needs to step up. We have to really represent the people. We have to keep the people in mind at all times when we're making these decisions.
We have about 10 minutes left, but when I go into the polls as the majority of people, I think the two most important things are taxes that hit your pocketbook and crime.
Yep.
So we discussed both of that. And
The water bill too.
And water bills too, right?
Those are sky high.
Yeah, that's to pay for the desal plant.
That's right.
And then you have accountability and transparency. The other key thing is infrastructure. Let's
That's
spend
right.
a minute on infrastructure
Yep.
too. What
Yep.
you'll do to improve the infrastructure. I know for years they've been trying to make Main Street, when I used to cruise the drag in high school, that all the kids, it was popular, toot your horns and your souped up cars.
Right.
And it was thriving, flourishing, the downtown. Now
Right.
it's like a ghost town.
Right.
It's one, they made it a one way, which killed it. And then Westgate Mall came in, which killed the businesses. So
Yeah.
what can you do?
A lot of complaints.
And the roads too are
The
terrible.
roads are really bad. We have antiquated technology systems where we don't have good databases to collect information. During COVID, that hit us hard, that we weren't able to collect. We didn't have data available.
I mean, look at all the restaurants that went out of
The
business.
small
and everything.
businesses,
And
I feel
small
so bad. We
businesses,
could
right.
not outreach to them because we didn't have a database. We didn't know where the minority-owned businesses were, the women-owned businesses.
Right.
We had nothing. So we really had to get out there and do the footwork to find them
Right.
to see if we could help them. And they didn't qualify for a lot of the PPP
Right.
and the SBA loans because they weren't structured properly in order to qualify for a lot of that.
Right.
Code enforcement. We have a horrible issue with code enforcement.
You raise
because,
money that way.
Right, we can raise money that way, but not only that, we don't have a database a central process for code enforcement, a database that centralizes code enforcement. So it's very scattered and all over the place, and the paper trail is horrible.
So with all these revenue enhancement programs that you discussed, you could take that money and
fix
the
our roads.
infrastructure. Perfect. All right, with we still got a good 8 minutes, but I'd like to get
That's what I was trying to get, Dick.
Right. It's a huge undertaking, as you well know, to run citywide in a city of 95,000 people.
Right.
So mayor is also a huge undertaking.
Right.
Let's talk about how you can become mayor, and obviously you have to raise money. It's
Right.
key.
Right.
Let's talk about what you're doing to raise money and from whom versus the incumbent mayor.
Right. So if you look at the Office of Campaign Finance, it's all there. You'll see where the mayor's money's coming from. He's raised $100,000, mostly from outside CEOs and from special interest groups. My Office of Campaign Finance more reflective of the community that we are in Brockton. The folks that donate to me don't have a lot of money, but they're doing their best to donate to me.
Right.
I've had a couple fundraisers that we had a decent amount of folks come out. I've put my own funding into the campaign because I care about the city. I've taken 3 months a leave of absence from my nursing job, to run the campaign, where I'm losing money that way as well. But it's a real grassroots effort that we're doing, and we're taking money from folks that care about the city and they want to see change. No special interests tied to any special interests. No big contractors that are looking for a tax break or anything like that.
Great approach.
Just great people that want to see change, as opposed to my opponent.
And let's talk a little bit about the newsletter you're working on. That should be exciting.
So we know, Dick, that news is very important. Information is very important. And a lot of folks in our community, they don't have access to information. I call it information equity, is what I'm championing. So we want to make sure we get information out to everybody in the languages that they speak, so that they're aware of what's happening in government and what's happening with their tax dollars. So we want to put together, we know the enterprise right now, we don't even know if they have a location or what they're doing, and they're not really running a lot of these stories. At one point, they would come to city council meetings and they would pick up certain things, big topic items, and get it out to the public, but we're not seeing a lot of that. So the fear is that we're just doing really bad with getting information to people.
Right.
BCA is great, but not everybody's watching it. Social media is great, but not everybody's on social media. So
Right.
we thought we'd do our own newsletter, and we would highlight the different items, the large ticket items, that we're voting on at City Hall, so people are aware. And we would also translate it into different languages, and we'd add some fun to it with some cartoons, to highlight some of the issues
Right.
that we think
Can't
are
wait to see it.
right. So I'm excited to be working on that. I think that it's something that folks need in the community. We can print copies for folks that actually like to
Right.
have a paper copy and distribute it in the laundromats and different areas, so people stay on top of what's happening. That engagement right there could potentially increase our dismal voting rates, because we really have
mail-in
turnout.
voting is key too.
And mail-in voting.
Because you have such a poor turnout physically,
Right.
13% in the primary,
Right.
that you got to stay on top
And
of
we're
the
doing
mail-in votes.
we're doing a disservice to the public because we're not letting folks know that mail-in is even available.
It's called suppressing the
We're
vote,
suppressing
I
the
believe.
vote. The city hasn't sent any, I was trying to be kind, but the city
Right.
hasn't sent out the forms, the application for the mail-in ballots to anyone. They should send them out to all of the households, all of the voters, so they have an option. COVID numbers are rising again.
Right.
So if folks have an option to, to vote from home, the city should do a
Right.
better job.
Absolutely.
in
all
getting that out.
communities. What I'm going to ask you is, first of all, share your information if people want to volunteer for Tina Cardoso for mayor. What is your website? What's your email? What can they do?
Okay. So my name is Tina Cardoso. I am running for mayor because I care about this city. I want a more transparent government. I want more accountability. I want more involvement, more public engagement. You can find out more about me. My bio is on my Facebook page. It's Tina for Brockton. And my website, tinaforbrockton.com. My phone number is 774-257-0951. You can call me anytime. If I don't answer, leave a message and I'll get back to you. I'm one of the very few counselors that actually returns calls.
Yeah.
And I enjoy speaking to residents about their concerns. I always say to folks, I'm not going to promise you anything, but I promise to listen, promise to answer my phone, listen to your concerns, and do my best to help you with your concern. We may not get the outcome that you want, but at least I'm available, I'm willing to listen, and I'm willing to work hard to try to help you. So we have Facebook, we have the website, tinaforbrockton.com. My phone number again, 774-257-0951, where I can be reached. And what else? We're on Instagram.
Also, if they want to pick up a sign, your headquarters are located
Oh yes,
at
so we're at
150
250 Belmont
250
Street,
Belmont Street.
Near George's Cafe in Brockton. So if folks want to pick up signs, if they want to volunteer, we need a lot of volunteers for phone banking and for door knocking. In just any way that you can help. You want to drop off water bottles, whatever you want to do. We're at 250 Belmont Street. We need to get people out to vote, Dick. Like I said, we have
Absolutely.
really poor turnout in Brockton. We have
Right.
60,000 registered voters, but we only get 12, maybe 15,000 each election. And so we need to do a better job with getting folks out to the
Terrific.
polls.
So before we conclude this interview, I know you speak Creole fluently, and there's a lot of people who'll be watching this who do not speak English. So why don't you take a minute or two to address them in Creole, and then I'm going to ask you one last question before I let you go.
Thank
I know
you.
you're very busy.
I appreciate it. So I speak Cape Verdean Creole, so I'll say a few words, not Haitian Creole, though I wish I did. So, meu nome é Tina Cardoso, estou concorrer para presidente da Câmara de Brockton. Estou concorrer para criar hoje a mudança na Brockton. Creio nos teu, Jan, hoje teu coisa nesses 2 anos que está servir como city councilor, que em está gostando, está sentir nos governo que está envolver comunidade suficiente para estar bem informado e do que estou de teu transparência no governo de Brockton. Então, creio fazer tudo esforço que é para ajudar Brockton, para manter os chão, criar os direitos e criar de mudança dentro do Brockton. Então, espero que nós saímos, nós damos aquele apoio, dia 14 de setembro do tem primária, dia 12 de novembro do tem eleição geral. Se nós temos mais informação, nós contactamos Tina Cardoso, 774-257-0951.
Sounds terrific. Even though I didn't understand more than a couple of words, Tina Cardoso, it sounds good.
So I gave my phone number. Primary is September 14th. I said a little bit about why I'm running, and I hope folks come out to vote in the primary
well,
election.
It's been a pleasure having
you.
you on the show. I wish you the best of luck.
I appreciate
and
this. Thank you.
Hopefully you'll make history and be the first minority woman mayor in the history of the City of Champions.
Absolutely.
So the one last question I have for you before I sign off to the audience is when you're elected mayor, am I invited to the inauguration?
Absolutely, absolutely. You'll be the
Terrific.
first one to get the invite. Thank you so
Terrific.
much.
I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. I appreciate this.
And
Thank you.
until the next Outside View, I hope you enjoy the show with my special guest from the City of Champions, Tina Cardoso for Mayor of Brockton.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Tina,
Dick.
for coming on the show.